Okay, there I go. Okay, friends. I'm sitting here. Today is one of those days where it just seems like everything is just getting away from me. The day is going so fast. It's just amazing how fast everything is going. I just want to say hello, everybody. I'm glad to be coming live to you today. I would create some posts and post some images. I do have everything, most everything ready, but I decided to come on here and do a live because I still have some work to do. I was creating some images and stuff, and you know, and I just thought it'd be more fun for us if I came here and talked to you today. In regards to let Grandma put her reading glasses on so she can see what she's doing. Um, as you know, this is something that's really dear to me and to a lot of people. The spirit seemed to touch a lot of people at the same time in regards to this wealth transfer. I thought I was building an economic campaign. Instead, I discovered I was building a love campaign because it's about love. It's about caring for yourself, for your family and friends, and for your community, and people across the nation. It's um, the one command that's larger than all the commands that was given to us. It's the love. We should love one another as you know we love ourselves. So it's about love. And every time I create something, and that's what it goes back to. It goes back to loving yourself, loving your family, your children, your husband, your parents, your neighbors, your community, you know, and that's what we're doing. Now, I was working on New Black Wall Street across America, New Black Wall Streets across America, and something hit me. I was spending a lot of time talking about economics, ownership, business, wealth, but I realized all of these things begins with one thing, and like I said, it's love. You know, and that was a very big discovery. Because if we don't love ourselves and love our community, yeah, we're not going to get anything done. We will continue doing the same. We'll be easily led not to care about ourselves. People run that little trick, want us not to love ourselves and love our community, telling us there's something wrong or divest us with doing that. So we got to understand, what love is. And if you can't love yourself, you can't love anyone else. And so that's what the campaign is about: shopping black, building black, restoring the wealth. There's a lot of things that got in our way that kept us from doing those things. There's always something thrown at us. You got to join this cause. You got to join that cause. You got to care about this person. You got to care about that person. But it was always no. But you can't say care about yourself. You can't say care about the black community. You can't. It was always when it came to us and loving ourselves and paying attention to what's going on in our lives, in our communities, in our wealth. We were told we couldn't do that, and it was made to seem like it was some type of taboo to do that. And everyone else does that. And it's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with people loving their communities and loving themselves and loving their families. And there's nothing wrong with us doing the same. And so that's why this is a campaign of love. I'm sorry, friends. Now, love is, it's going to cost you to create a legacy. It's going to cost you to build. You have to, in order to love, you become a creator. You create things and you build things. You build things that last. You build things of substance. So that's what love's about. If you're not doing something you love, or you have people that you love, or even love yourself, you're not going to build. You're not going to create. You're not going to do anything. So, and that's what we have to not let our love for ourselves and our people be undermined. So we got to think about our future. We got to think about ourselves. A lot of people are calling on us to come out and don't want us to rest, don't want us to rejuvenate or anything like that. Come out for their cause. No, we're at home working on our cause, working on our family, working on our wealth, working on our strategies. We have every right to protect ourselves. We did everything that we were supposed to do back in November 2024. We voted for everybody. We were the only demographic of people that voted for everybody to protect everyone. So now these other demographics, they want us to come out. Oh, you got to come out. It's just horrible, everything that's happening. Oh, the world is coming to the end. We had warned everybody, and a lot of that was directed at us. They knew about Project 2025 and how all of that stuff was directed at us, and many people did not care. And they thought most of the suffering would land on us like it always have. And a lot of people are telling us, "Oh, you're next, you're next." We don't want to hear. We're always next. We're first. We're first. So they never lose eyesight of us. So we're not worried about being next. That scare tactic isn't going to work on us anymore. We don't endure all this. So you trying to scare us by saying we're next. Be too afraid to love yourself. Don't love yourself. You got to be scared. No, we're not falling for that trick anymore. We're not going to let fear overtake us so that we can't love ourselves and think straight and do things that's going to protect us and build our wealth and increase our love for each other. So we're gonna love ourselves. We're gonna support ourselves. We're gonna invest in ourselves. We're gonna protect ourselves. We're gonna preserve ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that because everyone does it. That's human nature. So we're not superhuman beings where we shouldn't desire the same things that everybody else want. We're just ordinary people like everyone else. And now the new campaign that I've been working on have a couple of pillars, and I said let me describe what there are. One is love lifts. So when it comes to loving yourself, you know what love feel like. If you ever been in love, you know what it feels like, and it doesn't. If it's something that's causing you pain or suffering or hurt, that's not love. Love lifts you up. But as the song says, when nothing else could help, love lifted me. That's what I woke up this morning singing. Love lifted me. So and that's what we got to understand. When nothing else is could help, we got to think about the love. That's what's going to lift us up. That's what lifted our ancestors up, throughout all the years of suffering and going through all of that. Their love and their desire to protect their family, their hopes for a better tomorrow, that's what love does. Love doesn't tear you down. So if it's tearing you down and it doesn't lift you, it doesn't create, it doesn't build, then it's not love. Love leave a legacy. Our ancestors left us a legacy. They left us organizations, institutions. They were building, they were doing everything they could to make sure that we did not have to start from scratch. And they left legacies. We have just books and books and of all the things that are the legacies that our ancestors left us. So love leave a legacy. It's not going to leave you empty. It's going to make you better than when it first found you. So love leaves something behind. And we're going to love each other. We're going to love ourselves, and we're going to leave something behind. And also love leaves an inheritance. We know that. Not just money. Money's nice. We're trying to increase our wealth, and money, of course, money is nice. But we don't have, as the word says, the love of money is the root of all evil. See, a lot of people, the love of money is causing them to just do all types of crazy things, want to buy everything up and want to displace everybody because they love money. And that's the root of all evil, the love of money. But you need money for necessities and for to have some of the things that you want. But you shouldn't want to just purchase and buy everything at the detriment of everyone else. And so there's many people in this world that feels that way. They want to, I call them hoarders. You got people that's hoarders of junk. You have hoarders of money. Got more money than they could ever spend in a million lifetimes, them and also their children and children's children. They're hoarders like anyone else. If I was collecting used tissue, you would say something was wrong with me. Well, look at this crazy man collecting used. It's the same thing with money. It's something wrong with you. You got all these hoarding all this money, and you got people walking around that can't eat, and have you know, poor schools, and just things just crumbling all around you, and here you are hoarding money. That's insanity. You know, we want to be wealthy, we want to be comfortable, we want to be well off, but there's no need to hoard. We don't want to displace everybody and destroy their heritage, and and all this type of stuff. That's not our goal. There's enough room for everyone to exist without you having to destroy who I am, my ancestors' legacy and institutions, and things like that, and have our people to have to succumb to whatever it is that they want us to be because of their greed when it comes to money and institutions. Feeling like their institutions are the best and the only ones that should exist and the only ones that should be fine institutions. That's insanity. Okay, but as I said, it's not just money. It's knowledge. It's institutions. It's business. It's opportunity. Love is all those things. So, and there's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with us having those things. And if someone tells you that we shouldn't want or have these things and we shouldn't have nice things, there's something wrong with them. That's not love. If someone loves you, if someone loves the black community, they're cheering us on. They're saying it's about time. That's what they're saying to us. That's the message that our friends and our loved ones that's outside the black community is saying to us. They're rooting for us. They're saying, go, go, go. You can do it. So everybody else, they're sitting there. They're wealthy off of us. And there's something wrong with the people that's wealthy off of us, but they're not rooting for us. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with them. They should really be rooting for us. And many of them, they know our history. They know what happened to us. And it would seem at some point, some of them would have some type of compassion or empathy for us. But yeah, some of them, but our friends, they're rooting for us. They would say, go, you could do it, create your wealth, you create your institutions, now is the time. They would have felt the spirit like we felt the spirit telling us now is the time. So anyone that's not telling us to go and do it and go for, they're not our friends. They're too busy. They're looking at us with a jealous eye, want us to be down. They got that spirit that was trying to hold us down in them, and we don't want to. We have a campaign of love, and so we want to stay away from people like that and institutions like that and systems like that wants to keep us down. It's time for those things to end, and it's time for us to say no to them. As forcibly as we can. We to be all hands on deck. Moving forward, making sure this wealth transfer is complete and established. Our foundation is being built for new black Wall Streets across America. It's time to put the pedal to the metal. It's not time to slow down. It's full steam ahead. Was it Love Train? Get on board the Love Train. Get on board the Love Train. We full steam ahead. New black Wall Streets across America, building, and come on with your skills, your knowledge, your professionalism, whatever profession you're in, and build this foundation. We can do it, and we're going to do it. There's no question about that. It's going to be done because we are people in spite of. There were so many things that happened to us, and they thought, oh, this will really hold them down. Now when we do this segregation, this will really hold them down. Blacklisting, this will really hold them down. Jim Crow, this will really hold them down. And it never worked. We are people of love. That's why none of that stuff works. That's why it doesn't hold us down. That's why they're baffled. They're baffled why 2025 isn't going to work on us. They thinking they're doing something horrible to us, but it does the opposite. It motivates us to do more, to become more creative. We are some of the most creative people that ever existed. That's why they say we are the culture. You squeeze us, and that anointing oil comes out, and that's what happens, and they trying to, the stone that they tried to roll over on us, roll back over on them. So that's why a lot of people wondering why, black people aren't crying and, crying in our soup. It's because we know, we've been here before. We've been here before. So there's no reason to cry in our soup. We know to become creative. We know to build. We know to draw closer to each other. And we know to love. Yeah, so that's what baffles them. The love that we have for each other. And every time they just don't seem to learn. They keep going through this backlash stuff and they never seem to learn. You know, every time they go through the backlash, we come back stronger. We come back bigger. We come back better. And it seemed to baffle. And it just, sometimes it just tickled me how they, they don't look at history. They don't seem to recognize what they're doing. They're propelling us forward, and that's okay, so go ahead, you got the wrong heart. So that's why, they always lose. That's why they always lose, because we're the love team. And love lifts us, and we build, and we create, and we become everything that they didn't want us to be. They can't stop that. We're blessed. You can't curse what the Lord has blessed. And they keep trying it. And it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Out of all these hundreds of years, many of them still haven't got the message. They're looking at the wrong part. They're looking at all, they say, okay, we tried this heinous thing, and so we're going to try a different heinous thing. And instead of looking at the fact that it doesn't work and that it causes us to become more creative and more protected, they're not looking at that. Yeah, so one day they'll get the message and they'll get on the love team. And so I have all faith in that, that'll happen. Even if they don't, it won't stop us. So I don't know what to tell them. So you can't stop us. Say can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. That's us. That's us. You can try all you want to. Yeah, I don't know. You can come up with any type of diabolical plan you want to, because your plans are sick. And you're a sick person trying to attack well people. And it's like, oh my goodness. You all sick and crippled, and you're trying to attack well people that's full of love. And so how is that supposed to work? It's not going to work. I'm sorry to tell you that, so I don't know what to tell you, I don't know what to say, but find some love. Find some love. We have love. That's why it's working for us. And we're going to continue to work. Yes, they say quiet on the creek. When you go to the website, to the hub, you sign up to say you're interested, leave your name and your email address, and you get a Teams invite for the orientations we're going to start having on Wednesday and Saturday. So make sure you do that. Make sure you spread the word, share, like, and all those things to so that we can get the word out about new Black Wall Streets across the nation, so that we can get the people that we need to build the strong foundation, so we can get moving. So remember, go to the hub, share the hub, share what we're doing here, spread the love. That's what you're doing. You're spreading the love. And anyone that tries to convince you that the Black wealth transfer is not love, you don't want anything to do with them. They should be cheering you on. You have made them wealthy, and they should be pushing us forward. They should be pushing us forward. And I just thank God for you. I thank you for your love. I thank you for your understanding. I thank you for your encouragement. I thank you for rooting me on. So come on, let's do it, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.